Hey y'all, my name is Serena and this is Serena's Art Adventures. Welcome to the channel. Thank you all so much for joining me today. Today I want to share with you 4 different amigurumi patterns that I tested. Each one of these amigurumi patterns that I tested are from a different amigurumi book. So I'm going to share with you which book each of these patterns came from, and I'll share with you my experience crocheting the pattern and my review of each of these different patterns. I would like to preface by saying I have been crocheting for about 3 years now, and I don't have a lot of experience crocheting amigurumi, but I did crochet a few amigurumi about a year and a half ago, and then I crocheted some more amigurumi recently for Christmas. I did the Woobles kits, and they gave me some really great knowledge on how to sew my pieces together better and make them look more seamless, and how to place my parts on all these different crochet pieces, which was an integral part of me being able to have the knowledge that I needed to actually complete some of these patterns. In some of these patterns that I tested, they didn't specifically say on which round to sew in some of the pieces, and that is a little bit of a critique that I have for some of these patterns. So we're going to go ahead and start with the smallest pattern. So I have this starfish pattern here. So I keep all of my patterns on my iPad or my phone through the Kindle app. So this first little star pattern that we have here is from a book called Under the Sea Crochet. It is on Kindle Unlimited, so if you already are able to get Kindle Unlimited books for free, this is one that you can download for free. They have tons of cute patterns, more that I would love to try for sure, but the pattern specifically that I crocheted is this starfish. This starfish is super cute. It had a lot smaller of eyes and a little bit different embroidery in the pattern than what I actually went with my guy. I had these cutesy little eyes that I thought would look cute on it. They look quite big for this little guy, but I think it's cute. This pattern, they did have some little white embroidery that they did that kind of went in this direction, but with where I placed his eyes and how big his eyes were, I kind of just decided to do a little bit of embroidery just on the bottom, just to give him some color contrast. So I didn't really follow their directions on their embroidery. Now this pattern was very, very easy to do. It was a very easy pattern as long as you know how to have a magic circle, how to single crochet, half double crochet, double crochet, and treble crochet. You are definitely able to complete this pattern. They call for a sport weight yarn for the yarn that they're crocheting with and the yarn that they embroider with. And I used a bulky, which is a number 5 weight yarn is what I used for this guy. So he is definitely bigger than what they made in this pattern as well because of the bigger yarn that I used. They also call for 4mm safety eyes and a 3.25 hook. I used a 6mm hook, and I think these safety eyes are like 16mm or something like that. They are definitely much bigger either way. This pattern was fairly simple to do. I just followed the directions to create the star. I made the front of the star and then the back of the star, and then whip stitched them together. And before whip stitching them together, I did add the eyes, and then I whip stitched them together for like the 3 points, and then I stuffed it, and then I whip stitched together another little corner, and then I stuffed it the rest of the way before whip stitching the last corner. And this was a super easy pattern, very beginner friendly in my opinion, very easy to follow pattern. So that is the first pattern that I wanted to go over with you guys. Now the next pattern, I'm just going to pick up the next one here in the lineup that we'll go over, is this cute little kawaii blueberry ice cream. Now this book right here was from a book called Kawaii Crochet. Now this is another one in the Kindle Unlimited section on Kindle. So if you have access to those Kindle Unlimited books for free, then it is a technically free pattern as well. So this Kawaii Crochet book that this pattern came out of is so adorable. And the funny thing about this book is I was actually about to purchase the book from a Barnes & Noble about a week before, because I sat down with the book and I was flipping through the pages and I was reading a little bit about the invisible decrease. So this book, while I was sitting at Barnes & Noble looking through it, taught me how to do the invisible decrease. So when it came to doing all of these patterns, anytime a decrease was called for, I just did an invisible decrease. And I do think that it has a better look to it to do the invisible decrease. So I loved this book for teaching me how to do that. It is a very cute and colorful book. I love that they have the different colors sectioned out. So if you do want to look at this book, you totally should. They have a section for red patterns, and the red patterns, they have like a red drink cup, a red popcorn bucket with like popcorn overflowing out of it, which I think is absolutely adorable. Obviously, you can do the popcorn bucket whatever color you want, but they have a section where they have a pear, they have an orange juice, which you could use yellow and do a similar pattern and make it lemonade instead of orange juice. So it's really super cute. The pink section has a cotton candy in it. Then they have a brown section as well where they have some like pretzels and stuff like that. Either way, I've just got to say, I really enjoyed this book and it taught me a lot. I'm sure you're not going to be surprised when I say that this pattern as well is going to get a pretty high rating. However, I did run into some snags with this pattern. So this is the picture of the pattern. Again, due to copyright issues, I'm not going to share any of the actual pattern or any other part of this book with you, but this is what it looked like on the outside. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's so cute. And I can use those big kawaii eyes. I honestly think my version turned out a little bit cuter because of the type of yarn that I used and the type of safety eyes that I used. The safety eyes and the yarn that you use can make a huge difference when it comes to the final project, in my opinion. Now, the one thing that I had a little bit of an issue with on this pattern is it just says sew the pieces together. And that is a little bit difficult for me because I've only recently learned how to sew on pieces through doing the Woobles kit. And I don't have those like stuffed animal amigurumi sticks where you poke it through where you want it and then you take the time to crochet it in. So I kind of like place it where I think I like it and I try to sew the pattern in, like I try to sew the little pieces in. So all of these blueberries and these little leaves are made separately and then you sew them on top, which is perfectly fine. I'd have no problem with sewing now that I know how to do it better. I just wish they would have kind of given a little bit more direction as to which row to crochet everything on so you could get their little berry trio the way that they have it. Now on this specific picture, I'm just gonna show you just the picture and not the round instructions, but on the book itself that I'm looking at right now, it actually shows you some of the directions as well. So I'm just going to show you the top facing picture. Theirs is like a little berry cluster and somehow mine ended up being kind of like 3 in a row instead of a berry cluster. I still think it looks cute. It almost looks like a berry crown, so I'm totally okay with that. But because of where I started to place things to begin with, I started to look down and realize, I'm not going to really get a cluster out of that, so I'm going to have to line them up a little bit differently than they did. I personally like the way that their top view is compared to the top view of mine, but that's okay. It still turned out very cute. Now in this pattern, to get this really neat textured piece of the waffle cone right here, you have to know how to do a half double crochet. So this pattern is mostly single crochet with a little bit of half double crochet in the cone and some double crochet on the frills along the outside to make this guy look a little bit more like ice cream. I do believe the leaves have some different stitches in them as well, but not quite as many different stitches are used to make this amigurumi piece as this amigurumi piece, which is a little bit interesting since this amigurumi piece is a little bit more detailed. So I think that's kind of funny. So this right here is super cute. I added a little bit of blush. My nephew has played with this. I left these out because right after I made these, my nephew and my uncle's kids came over. Does that make my cousin? I don't know. My nephew and my uncle's kids came over and I wanted them to play with this so I could really see the durability on it. It does have a little bit of fluff coming out of it right now that I would like pick off, but I really wanted to test the durability of like the eyes and the little pieces that I sewed on and everything. And the one thing that happened is my nephew put his finger underneath of the mouth and he pulled on it, so the mouth got loose there for a minute and I wasn't able to get it perfectly tight. So one thing I can say is I can learn a little bit better on how to make my embroidery stay a little bit tighter. So that's something I'd love to learn. If you have any suggestions for that, I would love it if you would leave those suggestions in the comments. I'm very up for criticism. I like to learn new things. So definitely let me know if you have any suggestions or criticism in the comments below. But also let me know what you think of this little guy. I think he's absolutely adorable. And because of the fact that I wish they would tell you exactly like what round to sew each of these different things on, I am going to knock this pattern down 1 point. Now, I'm going to give this pattern a 9 out of 10 because other than that one thing, this is a very easy to follow pattern and it turned out super adorable. So in this book, it does give you a link in the pattern on how to sew two pieces together or how they might sew two pieces together. So that's awesome. I love that they do that. It does give some word detail about stitching, facial details, and then it has a couple of pictures of just like how to embroider on the mouth, for example. So that can be helpful information, but I personally think it's a little bit easier to have a video tutorial when you're first learning how to do embroidery. So I did watch a few embroidery videos after doing these so that I could get a little bit better with my embroidery. I'm better now than I used to be at sewing pieces on. Now I just need a little bit of help with the embroidery part of it, which is partially just the fact that I am not a professional amigurumi crocheter. I only have made a few different pieces and some woobles, but that's perfectly fine. So this pattern is going to get a 9 out of 10 from me. I really like it overall. It's really adorable and I love the final piece. Let me know what you think in the comments below of all these different patterns as we're going through them. I would love to know what you think. Now I'm again just going to go to the next one on the list here. Now this one again is from a different book than these two are from. This one, I absolutely loved it. And then I turned it around and I realized that where I crocheted the tail was off center compared to where I sewed everything else. And I think I sewed the tail on before I sewed the arms and legs on. And that's a me problem. I think next time I just kind of need to make sure that I crochet the pieces together in a way that like makes sure that I don't have this issue next time, because I crocheted him, I turned him to the back and I crocheted this on, and then I went through and I crocheted the arms and the legs on later, and then I set him down and I was looking at him, I was like, wait a minute, his tail is off center and he doesn't, like, I think the tail would be better if it was more on center because it would help hold him up a little bit better probably. But this pattern is another one where it did not actually tell you like where to sew everything on. This is a pattern that has a lot of sewn in pieces. You make these horns separately, the nose separately, the ears are separate and sewn on, the head and the body are two separate pieces that you sew together. This is the only one that I actually got any footage of me making. These other ones, I was making them while I was in the car, while I was visiting with family, and I didn't want to be rude and film during that time. So I probably could have done a little bit better about getting some footage of me crocheting some of these pieces. I will try to do better about that next time so I can share more footage of me actually making some of these little plushies. But right now, all I'm doing is just kind of giving you a little bit of a review of the patterns. So on this specific pattern, this is a adorable pattern. I have used this book once before to make a Cthulhu creature. So this book right here is a book that I actually had to purchase. It was not available on Kindle Unlimited, and I've actually had this one for about a year. Unfortunately, I go on and off on my desire to want to crochet amigurumi. The only reason I wanted to crochet amigurumi recently is because I did a Big Twist Joanne yarn haul recently, and when I had that Big Twist Posh yarn in my hands, I was like, it seems a little thin for amigurumi. I like to use like big thick blanket yarn usually, like Bernat blanket yarn for amigurumi in the past. So I thought they would turn up a little bit smaller than they did. But once I started working it up, this is the first one I started with. Once I started working them up, I was like, oh my gosh, I love this process. I love how soft the yarn is. I love the stitch definition of this yarn. I personally like this type of yarn that has more of like a matte finish than the chenille yarn that has a glossy finish to it. I think this shows the stitch definition a lot better. So I'm going to be doing a video coming up here shortly about Big Twist Posh alternatives, because I wasn't a Big Twist Posh girly, but I wanted to test out some of the Big Twist yarn to see what we were going to be losing when Joann's goes out of business. And I was so sad to learn that we were going to be losing this one because I fell in love with it in the process of testing it out to see what alternatives that there are. But I do know of some great alternatives that I have used, and I'm doing some research on some more alternatives as well. So just keep an eye out for that video if you are interested. But I absolutely love this yarn. I'm going to do a little bit of a close-up on some of these so you can really see some of the stitch definition and the color and everything. I think this is super adorable. So I used this little Cthulhu pattern to crochet a Cthulhu, and I did the Cthulhu in blanket yarn, but I double stranded the blanket yarn with another Bernat yarn that was more fuzzy, and I can't remember the name of that line, but if I can remember the name of that line or find the name of the line, I will insert a picture of it here so you know what I'm talking about. So this little guy is under the Winged Beast section in this A Crochet World of Creepy Creatures and Cryptids is the name of this book. And this one is the first one under the Winged Creatures. And when I looked at the color palette, I was like, oh my goodness, I have a green, I have this little brown color, and I have some really adorable safety eyes that I think would be great for a dragon. So I went ahead and crocheted this dragon. This is a great dragon pattern. I think it's very adorable. The only thing is on this one, I do kind of wish that it would tell you a little bit more where it wanted you to put the pieces. It has the same downfall as this pattern here. In my opinion, it's a downfall. I want you to be a little bit more detailed when it comes to patterns rather than a little less detailed, but that's my personal opinion. I'm looking through the book right now, and here is another little picture of the creature from inside the book. I think he turned out fairly similar, but we did use different yarns. I don't like the yarn that they used. I think they used an acrylic yarn. You can kind of see a fuzzy texture on the outside of this creature. So I think they used like an acrylic yarn, which I personally don't like for amigurumi. So that's what I love about amigurumi books. You can use the pattern, just use your favorite yarn, and it might turn out a different size, but it can turn out just the way you want it with the yarn that you prefer working with. So on the assembly portion, it just says whip stitch the bottom of the head, stuff the body firmly, sew it to the bottom of the head, attach one leg to each side of the body, making sure your plushie is in a balanced sitting position before finalizing your sewing, which is fine and all, but I don't have those little amigurumi sticks, and if I'm going to continue to do amigurumi, maybe I should, but he's definitely not balanced at all, as you can see. So that is a little bit of a downfall of this pattern. This is not a pattern that I feel comfortable actually like selling, so this one is probably just going to have to go to a niece or a nephew, which I don't think they'll be upset about that. They seem to like it when they get unexpected little amigurumi gifts. This one just does not sit up very well, so that's this one's flaw. I do, however, like the pattern, so just to give a number to the pattern out of 10, or I would say a 9 out of 10 on this pattern as well. This book in general has a ton of really cool patterns in it that I would love to try. I just have to get better at sewing pieces together and maybe even get some amigurumi sticks so that my crochet pieces look a little bit better. So part of this is a me issue, and then I do think part of it is like a pattern issue. In my opinion, this pattern is probably more for a advanced amigurumi maker, not just an advanced crocheter, but like advanced amigurumi maker, because the sewing in of the pieces requires another level of skill. This one right here, probably a beginner would be okay doing this pattern. They might have a little bit to learn, but I think that a beginner could probably do this pattern. And this one right here is definitely beginner friendly, easy peasy, lemon squeezy. So that's the difficulty level. I guess I inadvertently started with the easiest, and I'm going to the hardest crocheted piece because this one right here actually called for wire in the antlers. I didn't have wire, and so I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna make them anyway and see if I can get them to stay up. Obviously I can't. Before I even gift it to a niece or a nephew, I would love to see if I can still kind of shape and stick some wire in here so that his antlers like actually hold up. It is kind of cute. He has these sad eyes, so maybe the floppy antlers kind of give him this sad vibe anyway. So maybe he'll end up staying just the way he is by the time I give him away. But his neck is a little bit floppy. I probably could have stuffed the neck a little bit better. I've seen some suggestions online on how to make the neck a little bit less floppy. So I might take some of those suggestions going forward. One of the suggestions I saw was to crochet up like a little leg or something like that, like an extra little leg or something, and put it in the neck to help give it a little bit more like firm neck so that it doesn't do that. A very floppy headed guy. Still super adorable. I did embroider on the nose. That's the only embroidery that I did on the face. I didn't add a mouth or anything. And then I have some embroidery down here as well. I think this turned out super cute. And I can't believe I haven't even shared the book that it came out of yet. I'm so silly for that, but I got a little bit ahead of myself. So this little creature right here came from Unicorns, Dragons, and More Fantasy Amigurumi. This one had a super cute guy on the front, so I was very excited. And in the book, before you even buy it, they do have this other photo that shows you all these different creatures that you can make from within the book. And when I saw this photo, I was like, oh my goodness, I love literally probably every single one of these. I don't think I'll make every single one of them, but I do like the majority of them. So I did start, obviously I crocheted this little guy. So I did start crocheting a Pinch the Goblin using one skein of green Posh yarn, and I started to run low on the Posh yarn and I stopped crocheting. So I crocheted the head, I do believe the nose, and then 2 ears. And with just the 2 ears being crocheted right now, I'm about to run out of yarn. I have this green as well, which is a little bit different than the green that I'm using for the rest of him, that I might use to make the wart on the head. But I was sitting here thinking about what I can do with the rest of this guy, since I'm going to be out of green yarn before I can get to the hands or the feet. And what I think I'm going to do is make it look like he's wearing shoes and pants, do the shirt brown, and then maybe with the arms, I can have him wear a long sleeve. And I might have enough yarn to do the hands green as well. If not, maybe he'll be wearing gloves that match his shoes. Maybe he's a biker. Maybe he's a biker that wears black shoes and black leather gloves, right? That'd be cute. I have black Posh yarn. Let me know what you think about what I'm thinking about doing with the goblin in the comments, and just let me know if you think it's a good idea or not. This pattern right here is a little Periton. I think I said that right. I'm sorry if I didn't pronounce that correctly. He is a half deer, half bird. He's half deer and half bird. He comes from Atlantis. He's tough and curious, and though he's still a little boy, he feels quite ready to carry on the family's job, leading lost travelers out of the dark forest. I absolutely love that. This is an absolutely adorable concept of a creature. I love the little wings that came out on it and everything. It was a little bit more of a difficult piece to crochet because it does require some more things than you normally would use for amigurumi. So like some wire, and then you would crochet around the wire is what you're supposed to do for the little antlers. So that does add a little bit of a touch of extra difficulty to it. And this whole, so the head was sewn separately from the body. And then you start with the neck, and then you make the body, and then you crochet the feet while you're crocheting the body, and then you crochet the belly piece, and then you sew the belly piece in. So kind of a little bit of an interesting way for this piece to come together. He has a cute little floppy tail in the back here, some cute little ears. His antlers on mine are floppy because I didn't use the wire. I would say this pattern right here is more for an advanced amigurumi maker as well. So this one is probably, maybe not advanced, but intermediate. I would say this one is probably more advanced because they do not tell you how to sew any of this on, where to sew it on, or where to do the embroidery, or how to do the embroidery, or facial details or anything. They don't really give a whole lot of descriptors. I don't even think for like where the eyes go from what I remember, but I'm gonna go ahead and double check the pattern and make sure I'm right on that. Insert eyes between round 7 and 8. Okay, I'm wrong. Okay, so they do tell you where to put the safety eyes, but they don't really explain the embroidery or where to attach the the little wings and everything. So I just kind of placed them where I wanted them and then sewed them in. I do really like the final pattern, even though he's very floppy and his antlers are floppy. I still think he looks like a cute little innocent sad boy. If I were able to, though, I would love to try to recreate him in the future and maybe do him a little bit better justice. Maybe make his neck a little more stiff and his antlers a little more stiff, so he looks a little bit less just floppy overall, I guess. But I would love to know what your guys' opinions are on this in the comments below. I still had a lot of fun making all of these patterns. I love the final look for all of these patterns, even though they all have their own little flaws. And I think that part of it is just the yarn is super soft, and The eyes are super adorable. I got all of these eyes specifically from Dark Side Eyes, and I got them about a year ago. Here's a few more just of the pictures of it in different angles when you crochet it correctly, following the pattern a little bit more. The other problem that I had with this little guy though is his legs are a little uneven, because in the pattern it says go to the middle of his back, and so I did, and it was like 4 stitches and then 2 stitches, and I wasn't 100% sure what they were talking about, so I think that the stitch count is off. I just wish they would have said crochet 4 stitches and then start the leg or whatever, but they didn't really do the directions like that. The directions on the leg piece got a little bit convoluted, and I did understand by the time I got to the 4th leg that they seemed to be a little off center, but it does look like he's walking, so I wasn't too concerned about it until I finished the piece and stuffed him, and then I realized he doesn't even stand on his own. So minus points for me for that, because I should have gone back, frogged back the yarn, and then done it the right way. So that's more of a me problem than it is a pattern problem. Once I noticed that I was working the pattern up incorrectly and the stitches weren't all lining up, I should have frogged it back and fixed it, but I didn't think it would pose a problem. I actually thought it would help with the stability of it, because I was like, oh, it'll just have a little bit more support in different areas, and it just doesn't. It doesn't stand up on its own. Definitely not something that I can sell, but still a fun experience and a cute final piece in my opinion. So I'm going to rate this one an 8 out of 10, and that's because they don't show you how to do the embroidery or how to sew things on, and my final piece just didn't turn out as great as I'd like. I still like this book, and I'm still in the middle of making another pattern from this book right now as we speak, this Pinch the Goblin character, as we already have discussed. So just as a recap, I did end up using 4 books to make each of these different patterns. Each pattern came from a different book. The Under the Sea Crochet is this little starfish. This little blueberry came from Kawaii Crochet. This one came from A Crochet World of Creepy Creatures and Cryptids. And this one came from Unicorns, Dragons, and More, Fantasy Amigurumi. There are actually 2 more books, I do believe, that come after the Unicorns, Dragons, and More book. So I'm very excited to look into those in the future as well. 2 of these were on the Kindle Unlimited section. The first 2 that we looked at are on Kindle Unlimited. These other 2 patterns, as you can tell, they are a lot more detailed patterns in these books. And these books are ones that I actually had to pay for. Both of them, the Unicorns and Dragons and More, and then the Crochet World of Creepy Cryptids. I had to pay for both of those books, and these other 2 were on the Kindle Unlimited section. So that was an awesome surprise for me that I got 2 of them out of some books for free. I would absolutely recommend all of these books. And if you have Kindle Unlimited and maybe you're currently only using it to read books, but you also crochet, I would highly suggest that you look at what crochet books they have on the Kindle Unlimited selection, because I have downloaded so many Kindle Unlimited books that are crochet books so that I can get some inspiration, look through patterns, and not have to pay any money for the patterns, just to kind of see how they would work up and see which ones I'd be interested in making. I had a really fun time going over these patterns with you. I hope that I gave you guys some good suggestions. I hope that I was able to share with you some books that maybe you haven't heard of already. And if you have any suggestions on any pattern tests that you would like me to do in the future, please feel free to leave them in the comments below. Thank you all so much for joining me. If you don't mind hitting the subscribe button to follow along for more videos like this. And of course, if you want to be notified when I have more videos come out, feel free to hit the notification bell. And I appreciate all of you guys for being here, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.